In the heart of South Korea, tucked away from the bustling cities and the relentless march of progress, lay a village that time seemed to have forgotten. It was a place where everyone knew each other's names, where the fields were lush with crops, and the air was filled with the tranquil sounds of nature. This village, a picture of harmony and peace, was a world unto itself, isolated from the fast-paced life that characterized the modern era. The village's history was as rich as the soil that nurtured its crops. Generations of families had lived here, their lives intertwined with the land and each other. Traditions were the fabric of daily existence, passed down with reverence and practiced with pride. It was a community that thrived on simplicity and unity, where the problems of the wider world seemed distant, almost irrelevant. But beneath this idyllic surface, a shadow was about to fall. It began with the arrival of a stranger, a figure whose presence was as unexpected as it was unsettling. The villagers, curious yet cautious, watched as this outsider moved among them, a silent question mark that none could decipher. His arrival coincided with whispers of change, a subtle shift in the air that suggested the peace they had long known was on the verge of being shattered. As days passed, a sense of unease began to spread through the village. It was a feeling that defied explanation, a collective anxiety that gripped the hearts of the villagers. And then, without warning, the first signs of the mysterious illness appeared. What started as isolated cases soon grew, a creeping malaise that defied the local doctor's best efforts to understand or cure. The villagers, once bound by their shared sense of community, found themselves facing an invisible enemy that threatened to unravel the very fabric of their lives. Fear took root, and with it, the seeds of suspicion and division. The stranger, once merely an object of curiosity, became a focal point for their growing dread. In the midst of this turmoil stood Pablo, the village policeman. Respected and trusted, he found himself at the crossroads of reason and superstition, caught between his duty to protect and the increasing pressure to find answers in a place where logic seemed to falter. Unbeknownst to him, his investigation would lead him down a path that blurred the lines between reality and myth, challenging everything he believed in. As the village braced itself against the unfolding mystery, the stage was set for a confrontation that would leave its mark on the hearts and souls of all who lived there. The arrival of the stranger had set in motion a series of events that would lead to a climax both spiritual and supernatural, leaving the fate of the village and its inhabitants hanging in the balance. This is the story of the Forsaken Village, a tale of fear, faith, and the fight against a darkness that lurks in the most unexpected of places. Welcome to the prologue of their ordeal, the calm before the storm that would forever change the course of their lives. On a day like any other, with the sun casting a warm glow over the village and the field swaying gently in the breeze, the unexpected happened. A lone figure appeared on the horizon, walking steadily towards the heart of the village. His arrival was silent, unnoticed by many at first, but word quickly spread as curious eyes followed his every move. This stranger, with no known ties to the village and an air of mystery surrounding him, became the subject of whispered conversations and speculative glances. Pablo, the village policeman, was among the first to hear of the stranger's arrival. Known for his calm demeanor and keen sense of duty, Pablo viewed the newcomer with a mix of professional curiosity and mild concern. It was rare for outsiders to venture into their secluded world, and even rarer for one to arrive without a clear purpose. Deciding it was within his remit to understand the intentions of this unknown visitor, Pablo set out to greet him. As he approached, Pablo noted the stranger's appearance. Neither old nor young, with features that seemed unremarkable yet somehow difficult to forget. The man carried himself with an air of quiet confidence, his eyes observing the village with an inscrutable expression. When Pablo introduced himself and inquired about his business in the village, the stranger offered a polite but vague response. He claimed to be a traveler, seeking rest and a chance to experience the village's renowned tranquility. The conversation, brief and uneventful, left Pablo with more questions than answers. Nevertheless, he reminded the stranger of the village's customs and laws, emphasizing the importance of respect and harmony within the community. The stranger nodded in understanding, his demeanor polite but distant, and promised to cause no trouble. In the days that followed, the stranger's presence became a fixture in the village, though he remained on the periphery, an observer rather than a participant in daily life. His interactions with the villagers were polite but minimal, and while some found his solitude and silence intriguing, others felt a growing unease. There was something about him, an indefinable quality, that seemed to cast a shadow even on the sunniest days. It was during this time that the first case of the mysterious illness was reported. A young child, previously healthy and vibrant, fell ill with symptoms that baffled the local doctor. Fever, fatigue, and strange vivid dreams plagued the child, who seemed to slip further and further from health with each passing day. The doctor, a seasoned professional who had served the village for decades, was at a loss. The illness did not match any known conditions, and his treatments, usually so effective, made no difference. As news of the child's condition spread, so did fear and speculation. Some whispered that the stranger's arrival had brought a curse upon the village, a punishment for some forgotten sin. Others dismissed such talk as superstition, trusting in the doctor's ability to find a cure. But as the days passed and the child's condition worsened, the village's collective anxiety grew. Pablo watched these developments with a growing sense of unease. The coincidence of the stranger's arrival and the onset of the illness was troubling, but he was a man of reason, not given to superstition. Yet, he could not ignore the undercurrent of fear that had begun to spread through the village, nor the whispers that pointed to the stranger as the source of their misfortune. Determined to protect his community and find answers, Pablo resolved to investigate further. Little did he know, his search for the truth would lead him down a path of discovery and darkness, challenging everything he knew about the world and himself. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test the limits of his courage and the strength of the village's unity. As the days turned into weeks, the mysterious illness that had struck the child began to manifest in others. One by one, villagers fell victim to the same inexplicable symptoms. Debilitating fevers, overwhelming fatigue, and disturbing dreams that left them haunted during their waking hours. The local doctor, overwhelmed and desperate for answers, documented each case with meticulous care, yet found no common thread apart from the victim's symptoms. Pablo, taking his role as the protector of the village's peace and safety seriously, intensified his investigation. He began by visiting the affected families, seeking any clue that might explain the sudden outbreak. His notes detailed each visit, the symptoms described by the victims, and any interactions they might have had with the stranger. As the list grew, so did Pablo's concern. The coincidence was too great to ignore, yet he had no evidence to suggest any wrongdoing by the stranger. The village, once a harmonious community, was now a place of growing fear and suspicion. Conversations were hushed, glances were wary, and the stranger, once merely an object of curiosity, became a symbol of the unknown threat that had invaded their lives. Despite this, no one could say they had seen him do anything that could be construed as harmful. His behavior remained as it had been since his arrival. Quiet, solitary, and inscrutable. Amidst the rising panic, the village council convened to discuss the situation. Voices were raised in fear and frustration, with some calling for the stranger to be banished, believing his departure would end their affliction. Others argued for reason and caution, pointing out the lack of direct evidence linking him to the illness. Pablo, present at the meeting, urged calm and spoke of the need for a thorough investigation, one that would not give in to baseless accusations or panic. As the debate raged on, a new development shook the village to its core. The first death was reported, a beloved elder who had succumbed to the illness despite the doctor's best efforts. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a storm of grief and anger. The elder was respected and loved, a pillar of the community whose loss was felt by all. His death marked a turning point, transforming fear into a demand for action. Pablo, faced with the mounting pressure and the weight of his responsibility, felt the burden of his role more heavily than ever. He realized that the situation required more than just policing, it demanded leadership and a solution to the crisis that threatened to tear his village apart. He decided to confront the stranger once more, hoping to find some answers or, at the very least, to understand the role, if any, he played in the unfolding tragedy. Meanwhile, the stranger continued to move through the village as before, his presence a constant reminder of the unanswered questions that hung over them all. Pablo's next steps were clear. He would need to delve deeper into the mystery, seeking out any and all information that might shed light on the illness and its cause. This would include not just the stranger but any other factors that might have gone unnoticed. The village depended on him, and he would not let them down. As the sun set on another day of uncertainty, the village faced the coming night with a sense of foreboding. The illness had spread, taking with it the peace and unity they had once taken for granted. Ahead lay a path filled with challenges and unknowns, but also the possibility of finding a way to overcome the darkness that had descended upon them. Pablo, standing at the crossroads of fear and hope, knew that the journey ahead would test them all. In the wake of the elder's death, the village was enveloped in a palpable grief, a collective mourning that united the villagers in their sorrow, but also deepened the fear that gripped their hearts. The mysterious illness, once a concerning anomaly, had now become a deadly threat, its shadow looming over every interaction, every shared moment in the once peaceful community. Pablo, amidst a growing crisis, found himself at the center of a storm of expectations. Villagers looked to him not just for reassurance, but for answers and action against the unseen menace decimating their ranks. The pressure was immense, a weight that tested his resolve and dedication to his duty. It was during these trying times that he discovered a pattern among the chaos, a connection between the afflicted and their interactions with the stranger. This revelation, though speculative, provided a new direction for his investigation. He meticulously compiled evidence, documenting instances where the villagers' paths had crossed with the strangers. However, direct confrontation without solid proof would not only be irresponsible, but could also incite panic or hostility. Pablo needed undeniable evidence to link the stranger to the illness or to dispel the growing suspicions once and for all. The village, meanwhile, was a cauldron of emotions. Fear, anger, and suspicion boiled over, manifesting in whispered conspiracies and overt accusations. The divide grew, not just between the villagers and the stranger, but within the community itself. Some clung to traditional beliefs, seeing the illness as a curse or a supernatural affliction. Others, influenced by the few who embraced more modern perspectives, demanded a scientific explanation and solution to their plight. Amidst this turmoil, a second death shattered the fragile peace. A young mother, beloved and vibrant, succumbed to the illness, leaving behind a grieving family and a community shaken to its core. This loss was not just another casualty, it was a blow to the heart of the village, a cruel reminder of their vulnerability. Pablo, faced with the escalating crisis, took the bold step of confronting the stranger once more. This time, his approach was more direct, the urgency of the situation leaving no room for pleasantries. He demanded answers, seeking to understand the stranger's purpose in the village and any knowledge he might have of the illness. The stranger, however, remained a figure of enigma. His responses were calm and measured, betraying no hint of guilt or malice. He expressed sympathy for the villagers' suffering, but maintained his innocence, offering no insight into the cause of the illness. Frustrated but not deterred, Pablo was forced to consider the possibility that the stranger, while a convenient focal point for the villagers' fears, might not be responsible for their affliction. The confrontation left Pablo with more questions than answers. The lack of concrete evidence against the stranger put him in a difficult position. To act against him without proof would be to succumb to the same baseless fears and suspicions that had begun to tear the village apart. Yet, the coincidence of his arrival with the onset of the illness was too significant to ignore. As the village grappled with the growing crisis, Pablo realized that the solution would not be found in accusations or division, but in unity and cooperation. He resolved to bring the village together, to harness their collective strength and wisdom in the fight against the illness. This would require bridging the gap between the old ways and the new, between fear and reason, in a desperate search for answers. The escalation of the illness, the mysterious stranger, and the divide within the community had set the stage for a confrontation of a different kind. It was no longer just about finding a cure or culprit, it was about restoring the fabric of the village, about healing the wounds that fear and suspicion had inflicted on their collective soul. As Pablo pondered his next steps, the village awaited his guidance, their fate intertwined with his efforts to unravel the mystery that had befallen them. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but also with the potential for redemption and renewal. The fight against the darkness was not just a battle for survival, but a quest to reclaim the spirit of the village, to emerge from the shadow of fear stronger and more united than ever. The atmosphere in the village had grown tense, a tightrope of emotions where fear, suspicion, and a desperate hope for resolution balanced precariously. The illness had woven its way through the fabric of the community, leaving a trail of grief and unanswered questions. Pablo, steadfast in his duty, felt the weight of the village's expectations pressing down upon him, a burden that grew heavier with each passing day. As the divide within the village deepened, the clash between traditional beliefs and modern reasoning became more pronounced. On one side stood the proponents of shamanism, who viewed the illness as a spiritual affliction, a curse that required traditional rituals to cleanse. They called upon the village shaman, a figure of respect and authority, to lead them in ancient ceremonies, meant to drive away the dark forces they believed were at play. On the other side were the followers of Christianity, a minority in the village, but vocal in their conviction that faith and prayer were the keys to salvation. The local pastor, a man of deep faith and compassion, urged his flock to gather in prayer, to seek divine intervention in their time of need. He spoke of the power of faith to heal, to protect against the evils that seemed to besiege them. Caught between these conflicting ideologies was Pablo, a man of reason and practicality. He respected the traditions and beliefs of his fellow villagers, but struggled to reconcile them with his own need for tangible, logical answers. The tension within the community mirrored his internal conflict, a reflection of the broader struggle to find a path forward in the face of the unexplainable. As the village teetered on the brink of chaos, another tragedy struck a child, the very symbol of the village's future and hope, fell victim to the illness. The death was a catalyst, igniting the smoldering fears and frustrations into a blaze of anger and desperation. Accusations flew, with fingers pointed at the stranger, at the shaman, at the pastor, anyone who represented a potential source of the malice that had taken hold. Pablo, in the midst of this turmoil, sought to be a beacon of calm and reason. He convened a meeting of the village leaders, including the shaman and the pastor, in an attempt to bridge the divide and unify the community in their common struggle. The meeting was tense, with old grievances and mistrust bubbling to the surface, but Pablo persisted. He argued that the enemy was not within but among them, a disease that cared not for beliefs or rituals. The discussion was heated, passions flaring as each side defended its perspective with fervor. Yet, amidst the discord, a realization began to dawn, a recognition of the shared fear and helplessness that bound them together. Pablo's words, heartfelt and earnest, reminded them of their common humanity, their shared desire to protect and heal their community. In a moment of collective clarity, the village leaders agreed to a temporary truce, a joining of forces in the face of the greater threat. The shaman and the pastor, representing the spiritual and the faithful, proposed a joint ceremony, a blending of rituals and prayers, aimed at healing the village. It was an unprecedented act, a testament to the desperate times that called for desperate measures. Pablo, though skeptical of the ceremony's potential to cure the illness, saw the value in the unity it represented. He offered his support, facilitating the preparations and ensuring the event was conducted with respect and dignity. The village came together, a sea of faces lit by candlelight, their voices mingling in chants and prayers, a chorus of hope in the darkness. The ceremony was a powerful display of faith and tradition, a moment of solidarity that transcended the divisions that had fractured the village. As the night gave way to dawn, the villagers returned to their homes, weary but fortified by a newfound sense of togetherness. Pablo, too, felt a renewed determination. The confrontation had not brought the answers he sought, but it had ignited a spark of unity, a glimmer of light in the shadow of despair. The path forward was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the village would face the darkness together, as one. In the days following the joint ceremony, a fragile sense of unity held within the village. The ritual had not eradicated the illness, but it had, if only momentarily, bridged the chasm between opposing beliefs, offering a glimmer of hope in the face of continuing despair. Pablo, bolstered by this tentative solidarity, doubled his efforts to uncover the source of the malice that held his community in its grip. His investigation took a new turn when he stumbled upon an old villager, a keeper of stories and history, who spoke of a forgotten legend. This tale, woven into the fabric of the village's past, told of a time when dark forces had been unleashed by the greed and hubris of a few, only to be quelled by a pact made with the very essence of the land. The story, though steeped in myth, resonated with Pablo. It spoke of balance, of respect for nature and the unseen forces that governed life and death. Intrigued and desperate for any lead, Pablo delved deeper into this legend, seeking parallels between the ancient tale and the current plight. His search led him to the realization that the stranger's arrival coincided not just with the onset of the illness, but with the disturbance of an ancient site on the village's outskirts, an area long avoided and respected as sacred ground. Armed with this new information, Pablo sought out the stranger, determined to confront him with his findings. However, he found the man's lodgings empty, as if he had vanished into thin air. The discovery added to the growing mystery, deepening the shadows that seemed to close in on the village. Meanwhile, the scientific pursuit for answers proved fruitless. The local doctor, in collaboration with experts from outside the village, had analyzed samples and conducted tests, only to be met with more questions than answers. The illness defied explanation, its symptoms and progression inconsistent with any known disease. It was as if the sickness was not just a physical ailment but something more, something that eluded the grasp of science. The village, caught between the revealed legend and the absence of scientific explanation, found itself at a crossroads. Fear and uncertainty led to paranoia, with villagers eyeing their neighbors with suspicion, wondering if the darkness had taken root within their midst. Pablo watched this unfolding with a heavy heart, knowing that the true enemy was not the disease, but the fear it sowed. In a bid to rally the community, Pablo organized a series of meetings, bringing together the village's leaders, the doctor, and any who wished to contribute to finding a solution. These gatherings, initially tense and fraught with conflict, gradually became forums for open discussion and collaboration. Ideas were shared, from practical measures to protect the vulnerable to more esoteric suggestions, inspired by the village's rich tapestry of beliefs. Through these efforts, a plan began to form a multifaceted approach that combined the best of their scientific knowledge with the wisdom of their traditions. It was a bold strategy, one that required the cooperation and trust of the entire village. Pablo, serving as the linchpin of this fragile alliance, worked tirelessly to maintain the momentum, to keep the flicker of hope alive. As the plan was put into action, the village found itself united in a common cause, each person playing a part in the battle against the unseen foe. The efforts ranged from practical to symbolic, from quarantine measures to rituals of protection and healing. It was a comprehensive effort, a testament to the village's resilience and determination to reclaim their home from the grip of darkness. Pablo, in leading this charge, found himself transformed. No longer just a village policeman, he had become a symbol of their collective will to survive, to overcome. He realized that the true strength of the village lay not in its traditions or its scientific achievements, but in its people, their ability to come together in the face of adversity, to blend the old with the new in a shared fight for the future. As the village mobilized, the shadow of the illness began to recede, its hold weakening under the weight of their united front. The darkness, which had once seemed invincible, now showed signs of vulnerability, a hint that the battle, though far from over, was not lost. The unveiling of the darkness, the blending of science and tradition, had opened a new path forward, a way to combat the threat not just with medicine or rituals, but with the strength of the community itself. It was a revelation that changed the course of their struggle, offering a glimmer of hope in the darkest of times. As the village rallied around Pablo's leadership, uniting old beliefs with new strategies, a palpable change began to take root. The combined efforts of tradition and science, though unconventional, started to show promise. Reports of new cases began to dwindle, and some of those afflicted showed signs of improvement. This positive shift, however, was not without its challenges. The fragile alliance between the village's spiritual leaders and the proponents of scientific intervention was tested as both sides claimed credit for the improving situation. The shaman, a figure of respect and authority, argued that the rituals and ancient practices had appeased the spirits and were responsible for the turn of events. Meanwhile, the local doctor and his team pointed to the quarantine measures and the treatments they had implemented as the key factors in stemming the spread of the illness. Pablo found himself in the midst of this clash, striving to maintain unity and focus on the larger goal. He reminded the village that their success was not due to any single approach, but to their collective effort. He emphasized the importance of continuing their unified strategy, despite the differing opinions on what was driving the recovery. Amidst this delicate balance of beliefs and methodologies, a surprising development occurred. The stranger, who had vanished as mysteriously as he had arrived, was spotted on the outskirts of the village. His sudden reappearance reignited suspicions and fears, threatening to unravel the tentative peace that had been established. Pablo, upon hearing of the stranger's return, set out to confront him, determined to uncover the truth behind his mysterious presence and sudden disappearance. This confrontation, he believed, was key to resolving the lingering doubts and fears among the villagers. The meeting between Pablo and the stranger was charged with tension. Pablo demanded answers, questioning the stranger's motives and his whereabouts during his absence. The stranger, calm and enigmatic as ever, spoke of his own search for understanding, suggesting that his presence was not the cause of the village's woes, but merely coincidental. He hinted at deeper forces at play, forces that were beyond the comprehension of the villagers, and perhaps even beyond the reach of their combined efforts. This cryptic exchange left Pablo with more questions than answers, but it also provided a new perspective on the situation. The stranger's words hinted at a complexity to the illness and the events surrounding it that Pablo had not considered. It suggested that the battle they were fighting was not just against a disease, but against something more intangible, something rooted in the very essence of the village and its history. As Pablo pondered this revelation, the village prepared for a final ritual, a collective effort that would combine the strength of their faith, their traditions, and their newfound knowledge. This event was to be a culmination of all their efforts, a decisive stand against the darkness that had plagued them. The ritual was a spectacle of unity and determination. Shamanistic chants mingled with prayers, ancient symbols were drawn alongside modern sigils of protection, and the villagers, regardless of their beliefs, stood together, united in their common cause. It was a powerful demonstration of the village's collective will, a statement of their refusal to be divided or defeated. As the ritual reached its climax, with the village enveloped in a chorus of voices and the air charged with a palpable energy, The stranger, his role still a mystery but no longer a focus of suspicion, faded into the background, his presence a reminder of the unanswered questions that remained. But for the village, the immediate crisis had passed, leaving behind a renewed sense of community and a shared experience that would be remembered for generations. As the village looked towards the future, there was a sense of cautious hope. The clash had been a crucible, testing their strength and unity, but it had also been a catalyst for growth and understanding. The darkness that had once seemed invincible had been confronted, not by force, but by the collective spirit of a village united. The village, now emerging from the shadow of the mysterious illness with a newfound sense of unity and strength, faced the future with cautious optimism. The efforts of Pablo, the shaman, the pastor, and the entire community had woven a tapestry of resilience, one that had managed to hold against the darkness that threatened to engulf them. The stranger, a figure around whom much of the initial fear and suspicion had revolved, had become a less ominous presence, a puzzle piece that no longer seemed to fit the narrative of fear. In the wake of the village's recovery, Pablo found himself reflecting on the events that had unfolded. The confrontation with the unknown, the clash of beliefs, and the ultimate realization of their collective power had changed him. He had begun this journey as the village's protector, a role defined by tradition and expectation, but emerged as something more, a leader who had seen his people through a crisis of both faith and health. The stranger, before departing the village as quietly as he had arrived, sought out Pablo for a final conversation. In this meeting, shrouded in the early mist of dawn, he offered Pablo a perspective that would forever alter the policeman's understanding of the events. The stranger spoke of the village's unique place in the world, a nexus of energies both ancient and vital, suggesting that the illness was not an invasion, but a manifestation of imbalance. He hinted at Pablo's role, not just as a protector, but as a guardian of this balance, a bridge between the seen and the unseen. This revelation, cryptic yet profound, left Pablo with a deep sense of responsibility, but also with many questions. The stranger departed with a final piece of advice: to watch, to listen, and to learn from the world around him, for the true nature of the village and its challenges were not to be conquered but understood. As the days passed and normalcy began to return to the village, the events that had once consumed their lives started to take on the quality of a distant storm, one that had passed and left its mark, but it also provided much-needed rain. The villagers, their bonds strengthened by the ordeal, found new ways to connect and support each other, blending the old ways with new understandings. Pablo, in his role as both protector and now guardian, maintained his vigilance. The illness had receded and peace had been restored, but the lessons learned from the confrontation with the darkness would not be forgotten. He encouraged the village to continue embracing both tradition and innovation, to remain united in the face of any future challenges. The culmination of the spiritual and supernatural confrontations left an indelible mark on the village. It was a testament to their resilience, a story of how fear and division were overcome by unity and strength. The fate of the characters, particularly Pablo and the enigmatic stranger, remained wrapped in ambiguity, their roles in the village's story a blend of myth and reality. As the story of the Forsaken Village concluded, the narrative did not offer clear answers, but rather a reflection on the complexity of life, the unseen forces that shape our destinies, and the power of community. The villagers had faced the darkness, not with weapons or words, but with the collective strength of their spirit, a force more powerful than any malady. In the end, the village returned to its peaceful ways, but with a deeper understanding of the delicate balance between man and nature, tradition and progress. The cries of the Forsaken Village had been silenced, not by the vanquishing of a foe, but by the healing of a community, leaving a legacy of hope and unity in the face of the unknown. And so, the story of the village, Pablo, and the mysterious stranger became a part of the tapestry of tales that would be passed down through generations, a reminder of the time when darkness fell and was overcome, not by a single hero, but by a village united. Months had passed since the village had emerged from the shadow of the mysterious illness, its people now walking paths of recovery and resilience. The fields once again thrived under the careful hands of the villagers, and laughter returned to the streets, echoing off the walls of homes that had stood silent in the face of fear. Yet, even as life resumed its rhythm, the events that had unfolded remained etched in the collective memory of the community, a somber reminder of the fragility of peace and the strength found in unity. Pablo, whose role had been pivotal in guiding the village through its darkest hours, found himself changed by the experience. No longer just the village policeman, he had become a symbol of hope and a guardian of the balance that had been restored. His interactions with the stranger, though brief and enigmatic, had imparted a deeper sense of purpose, a realization that his duties extended beyond the physical safety of his people to the spiritual and existential harmony of the village. The stranger, as enigmatic in departure as in arrival, left behind a legacy of questions and a sense of intrigue. His presence had been a catalyst for change, pushing the village to confront its fears and to unite in the face of adversity. Though his true nature and intentions remained shrouded in mystery, his impact on the village and on Pablo was undeniable. As the seasons changed, bringing with them the promise of renewal and growth, the village continued to heal. The illness that had once threatened to tear them apart was now a chapter in their history, a testament to their resilience and capacity for unity in the face of unknown dangers. The rituals and ceremonies that had blended the old with the new had become a new tradition, celebrated as a symbol of their victory over the darkness. Pablo, reflecting on the journey, realized that the true strength of the village lay not in its ability to overcome a single crisis, but in its renewed sense of community. The challenges they had faced had brought them closer, weaving a stronger social fabric that would protect them against future adversities. The story of the Forsaken Village, with its blend of mystery, courage, and community, became a legend in its own right. It was a narrative that transcended the boundaries of the village, inspiring others to find unity in diversity, strength in adversity, and hope in the darkest of times. As the epilogue to the village's ordeal closed, the echoes of their struggle and triumph lingered, a haunting yet hopeful melody that whispered of the power of the human spirit to face the unknown. The cries of the Forsaken Village had been silenced, but their legacy lived on, a reminder of the light that can be found in the depths of darkness and the enduring bond of a community united.
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed the video. We highly recommend you watch the next video here. Oops. I'm waiting for you to click. Yes, you've clicked. Happy watching.